Hi guys, welcome back to My Steps to Sobriety, my show on YouTube and as a podcast with me, your host, Stefan Neff. Today is another fantastic day for an interview and I've got Skip Mondragon with me. Skip is a depression warrior and he truly is a warrior and he truly has battled the demons of depression and is now on a journey where he has written a book to share his experiences and the lessons he has learned. And I've had the honor of reading that book, and I knew I had to get this guy onto my show because it is just so beautifully logically placed and written. It was a joy for me to read it, and I thought, now we need to bring this guy on. So Skip, thank you so much for coming onto my show.
It's my delight, Stefan. I feel like we are already bosom buddies here, kindred spirits.
Well, we are, aren't we? Because we are both in the medical field. We both have been in generations where, for many decades, emotions were not something to be proud of. On the contrary, you were taught how to be a man, a real man who doesn't show emotions. Right. Whilst I was never in that extreme, if you cry, you're a girl kind of thing. It wasn't this bad, but it was not far off either in my upbringing. And to a certain degree, I must say I'm a child of the 80s when I look at my forming years. When I look at my heroes on the screen, it was Mel Gibson and Lethal Weapon, down and out policeman, drinking far too much, smoking. It's that kind of a thing. The Bruce Willis, the Die Hard was always the kind of anti-heroes that I aligned with. So it was macho. That's how I wanted to be. And that's, I guess, the kind of upbringing I had. And I never learned about emotions, that funny thing. And reading your story, you have got a story that is very physical, very out there in leadership as well as in exercise. Tell us a bit, how did it all start with you when you were a boy and then becoming a young man? What was your journey then?
I grew up in a very chaotic family. My father came back from the Korean War a broken man. Wow. My aunt, his older sister, and my older cousins, they tell me the man that went to war was not the man that came back. He was in and out of VA hospitals, Veterans Administration's hospitals obviously for veterans. The official diagnosis they gave him was schizophrenia, my mother tells me, but based on his behavior, I believe he was bipolar and would become psychotic, meaning lose contact with reality, what we would call crazy, and go off on drinking binges, gambling, gambled the car away. He'd be gone days at a time. We wouldn't know where he was at. But when he'd come home drunk, because he's also an alcoholic, and he was a mean, abusive alcoholic. And I didn't find out till I was well into my 30s how abusive he was towards my mother, because she never talked ill of my father. She would just simply say, your father is ill, because he was gone most of what I could remember of my childhood. In fact, I have almost no memories. I have a couple fleeting memories before the age of 7. So I know from what I remember and what I've been told, very traumatic, chaotic. That being said, my eldest sister Roma tells us, we would run and hide when my father would come home because we didn't know which father was coming home, the loving, kind, gentle father or the mean, angry, abusive father. He struggled with this. I'm also sure he struggled with PTSD. And my mother says, in addition to this, he'd go into the room. And I do remember one occasion when he visited that he was in the bedroom, chain smoked cigarettes, Camels, I remember. He had stains on his fingers right here between his 2 fingers. And room dark, and wouldn't come out of that room days and days on end. So I realized, much in retrospect, that he was depressed during that time. All that being said, he was ill. So it was chaotic. We moved a lot. I was small for my age. I mean, typically the smallest kid in the class. New kid on the block, moving a lot, don't have any friends. You're small, you're shy, you're awkward, physically inept. Okay, I was born in 55. So growing up in the early 60s in the public school system, physical prowess, being able to perform in sports, that was your capital on the playground. And I lacked any capital whatsoever. And in fact, when you go out to play on the playground, when they choose teams, have to choose teams, I was the last one invariably chosen. And then this chorus would rise up. Why does he have to be on our team? Well, I failed miserably at anything I tried, be it baseball, gymnastics. I mean, I failed at tetherball. I was so bad. But in 8th grade, I discovered wrestling. And it was the first time in my life that I thought, gee, I can be good at this. I think I can really be good at this. Mm. And so I started wrestling. But lest I forget, let me back up. It was also during that year that my biological father died. So he died at the age of 35. My mother had remarried the year before. We had moved from New Mexico back to Colorado. And my stepfather, my daddy-o, was the most amazing man I've ever known. And then finally we had some stability in our lives. And thank goodness for my daddy. And bless God every day for bringing my daddy-o into our lives. See, I'm one of 7 children. So when daddy-o married mom, 8 children, and my little grandma, my abuelita, lived with us too. So he got a bonus package. He loved us all.
Oh, goodness.
So that being said, wrestling. And so I had been bullied, all those years growing up. So I get into wrestling. And I was the only 8th grader to make the varsity team that year. Now, mind you, I didn't win any matches, but bullies didn't bother me after that. Next year, I was actually the best wrestler in our wrestling room. But I still didn't win any matches because I couldn't sleep the night before. I'd toss and I'd turn thinking about the match. And by the next day, I was so emotionally and physically exhausted. I had to get out on the mat just thoroughly exhausted and couldn't perform the way I was capable of. But the summer after that, I won the first of many state freestyle tournaments, one of the Olympic styles, and continued to develop and grow, ended up as a 2-time district champion, a state runner-up. And this was in what we call the schoolboy, unique American style of wrestling, but had won many, many freestyle state championships, placed in 2 national freestyle tournaments. So had a lot of accolades there, graduated as an honorable mention All-American in wrestling. So had a storied career there. But fast forward to 2012. So I graduated from high school in 73. Fast forward to, did a couple years of college, and I was a mediocre college wrestler at best, due to a variety of reasons. Did a little wrestling after that, where I did quite well. But fast forward then to 2012. I'm sitting in the state tournament, Georgia High School state tournament. My youngest son, the youngest of my 4 sons, Joey, he had finished his high school career and had a very illustrious career. And we're watching the state finals. And I picked up a magazine and looking at dates, and there it shows the Veterans Wrestling. And down there, May 5th and 7th, 5th and 6th, Tucson, Arizona. So this is mid-February. And I said, Joey, I want to compete in this. Will you help me train? He goes, okay, Dad. Now, this is my 18-year-old son. Okay, Dad. But you'll have to do everything I tell you.
Just like mine.
Yeah.
Just
yeah. Now tell me, I think your boys are what, 20 and 21 now?
18, they're 18 and 19, 2020.
18 and 19.
Same
okay.
year.
So what 18-year-old son would like to be able to tell his dad, okay, Dad, but you're going to have to do everything I tell you.
Exactly. So how was your new trainer?
He was great. So he is my trainer. He was my manager, he was my coach, and he was my training partner. Yeah. And we had a great time. So I come home from practice, and I was in great shape at that time. I was at a very good baseline of fitness. I'd come home from practice, and I'd kind of stumble in. It's like, honey, I think I'm going to go soak in the hot tub. And she'd look at me and kind of joke, all right, old man, have you had enough yet? Have you had enough yet, old man? No, not yet, honey. And then I'd sit on the couch and I'd have ice packs here and on my elbow, on my shoulder, on my knee. And, and the first 6 weeks, I'd get up in the morning because I added a short workout in the morning just to boost my fitness, but also to help me bring my weight down to my competing weight. And my feet had hit the floor in the morning. And it's like, I'm so sore. And I was like, all right, Skip, get up, get moving. And then about the 6-week mark when I got up, and it's like, I'm feeling good. And then I got outside where I do my routine. And I feel good. I feel really good. And I remember saying, son, you better bring your A game today because the old dad is feeling good. So we went to Tucson. Actually, let me show you. We won a national championship.
Are you kidding me? USA Wrestling, look at you. Fantastic. And wow. So how young were you at that stage?
I was 56 years old.
You bastard. You're in a bloody good shape. You bastard. Oh, well done, you. Well done. Well done. That's all I can say. Because there are so many reasons why I'm so proud of you without being condescending. Well done. Because it takes guts. That takes guts to go out there. And I think that reflects your whole life. Here you were, small for your age, bullied, and then you found the outlet of wrestling, a very active and very, very competitive sport. And I must say that of all the fighters, I always dreaded the little ones. I must say, you're so bloody fast. So by the time I throw a roundhouse kick, he's gone. Yeah, that's right. It's right. So no, honestly, so yes, there is something to be said about that. But more importantly, so let's go back to when you were a youngster. So here we have got you defined as this guy who lives and breathes wrestling, and you did so throughout your life because you were underplaying a bit your thing. You became wrestling coach, and you were out there really helping others to make the best out of themselves through the medium of coaching. So, but also you at some stage looked at the military and decided actually that could be something for me. How did that come about? I mean, here was your father coming a broken man out of the Korean War. Was that not a turnoff? Was that not, wow?
Actually, it was not. And in retrospect, I think perhaps in part, it may have been that brokenness that played a role in it. All your life events, as you know, make us who we are. But that being said, I had received what we call an early admission to medical school. And I don't know back where you trained in Germany, if you had that or not, Stefan, but received an early admission to medical school. So I actually received that notification in the fall before I would matriculate to medical school the next year.
All right, cool.
But that meant that with that early admission, so I could apply to one medical school. If I got accepted early, that was the medical school I had to commit to. But see, I wanted to stay where I was finishing up my undergraduate work at Oral Roberts University in Tulsa, Oklahoma, where I had met my sweetheart, which is another story in itself, because I had no intention of being involved with a young woman.
Oh, well.
That being said, we were going to get married. But there was a problem. We wanted to be married. I needed to be able to support a wife. And how am I going to support a wife? Likewise, I wanted to go to medical school. How am I going to pay for medical school? I didn't want to go in debt. I didn't want to take out student loans. The Army, as with the other branches of the military, have what's called a health profession scholarship program. So full scholarship, books, tuition, fees, everything, plus a living stipend. And it was pretty meager. I mean, it was small, but enough, combined with what my wife made with her fellowship, where she was doing her graduate training at the University of Tulsa, that with the two of those combined, we got by. Later, after we had our first son, and he was born as a preemie, small for gestational age, and then later diagnosed with a rare red blood cell aplasia, aplastic anemia called Black Van Diamond syndrome, that you may be familiar with, but amongst the most rare of these type of diseases. That being said, there were some outstanding bills. Now, we received a lot of professional courtesy because our insurance, as you might imagine, that we had didn't cover a lot of that. But there were still about $4,000, $4,500 outstanding bills, so we had to pay this. So they told Sherry, go down and apply for, I think it was Title IX or something like this. And so she did. I don't know how I got off on this. Oh, I know. And so she dressed up, took her briefcase, all her documents, went down there, and the woman looking through all of this and said, "Oh, gee, I see that you live under the you're under the poverty level." But because you don't have any indebtedness, you don't qualify for any help. And so she came home and told me that. And I said, well, what's the logic behind that? We're responsible. We choose not to go in debt. Yeah. We live under the poverty level. But we would laugh and say, we're under the poverty level. Why? Yeah. We skimped, what it's like, when you're getting started, and third-hand furniture, a lot of meatless meals, and, you just do without. Yeah. We had one car for many, many years, and I'd bum a ride to school or ride my bike, and, we got by just fine. We just did without. But but we laughed and said, below the poverty level. We didn't feel we were impoverished. I mean, but why the Army? It was so that I could get married, and so I wouldn't come out of medical school with massive debts. That's why the Army. Plus, I felt this kinship. I had uncles that had served in World War II. I had an uncle who actually was captured by the Japanese. He survived the Bataan Death March, only to die in a concentration camp of malaria and starvation. I had uncles that served in Korea. I had a brother who had been in the Marine Corps, another one in the Navy. Brothers.
So when did you join? Uncles. Which time was that?
I'm sorry?
When did you join? Which year?
I came on active duty in 89. So I finished a civilian residency. Normally, you would graduate from medical school and then do a military residency. I just so happened to be in this cohort of HPSV students, Health Profession Scholarship Program students in the Army, that they had far more applicants or enrollees in the program that year than they had slots for internships. So I got a Dear John letter telling me, we are sorry to inform you, but you have not been selected for an Army internship. I hadn't even looked at any civilian programs. I was intent on going into the military at that point and doing a military internship. And here it is, about 6 weeks left before Christmas time there. So the season was quickly closing there in terms of applying for internships. I had 6 weeks. We have a newborn baby. He's got all these medical problems. He came home on a cardiac apnea monitor and had to be taking prednisone and, and on, reflux medicine. And it was a nightmare with that. He's still, SGA and on, small gestational age. So all these issues are going on. We had just recently diagnosed his anemia and on and on. And so we're all stressed out because of this. We get this letter and it's like, are you kidding me? So I started making this massive there. And of course, those days you didn't have the internet. Everything, was pulling out books, going to the library, doing these searches, picking up the phone. So I started looking at major metro areas that had different programs where I could go to this city and that city and hit maybe 3 or 4 different programs in the city to interview at. And within 6 weeks, I visited, I don't know how many cities, did those. And we ended up in Canton, Ohio. And it just so happens the new incoming program director there happened to be a retired Brigadier General, Dr. Andre Ognebeen, and he had been former commander at Brooke Army Medical Center in San Antonio, Texas.
What a coincidence.
Just go figure. Yeah.
Oh, perfect.
And the most amazing bedside clinician and academician combined that I have ever known, that I had the privilege of working with. Yeah. Just an incredible man. He intimidated me so horribly that first many months I'd be in morning report, or I'd be sign out rounds or noontime conferences, and he'd ask me a question. Skip, what do you think? I'd come home and I'd tell Sherry, oh my gosh, he must think I'm the most idiotic intern he has ever seen in his life.
Oh dear. Did you ever talk to him afterwards? And did you ever?
Oh my gosh! Oh yes. Actually, I was a transitional intern, so rotating through various programs. I started off with my first 3 months in internal medicine, and I had planned on doing the transitional year and then apply to do physical medicine rehabilitation in the Army, but I really fell in love with internal medicine. But I had this question: can I be a good internist? So I actually went to talk with Dr. Ognebeen, and we called him Dr. O, or the big O. And, we go, and Dr. Ognebeen, I made an appointment, and come in, Skip. And what's on your mind? And I said, well, Dr. Ognebeen, I'm really thinking about medicine, but I don't know if I could be a good internist. And he looked at me and said, Skip, I think you could be a good internist. I think you could be a very good internist. And we'd love to keep you in the program here. We could write letters of deferral and get you graduated through our program.
Oh. Wow.
The big O was telling me this. Sure, I thought I was this giant screw up. But, that was the shot in the arm. And we became good friends later. And actually, he asked me to be a chief resident in my last 6 months in the program, but I had to defer. We were getting ready to move. We had another new baby, and I just couldn't do that to Sherry and all. So I had to defer. But we became good friends, and we're good friends to this day. And so,
but isn't it amazing how our mind, especially as doctors, we are very prone to that. We see one thing happening, and oh my God. And you don't see the 999 good things that you have done, the nice bedside manner that you had with this person who really needed it, the support that you gave that nurse that just came naturally out of you, where he's stood behind the curtain and heard what you were doing. You don't see all that. But you see the one screw up where you're tongue-tied to the nth degree, and you think, oh my God. And that, I know. How many nights have I laid there like you and actually worrying about something I had said, one sentence, half a sentence I said, and you get this kind of look and you think, oh God, no, that's the end of me. And the reality is, it is normal. We all are screw-ups. We all do make mistakes. And it is so important to embrace those mistakes. That is, for a long, long time, I've been teaching APLS, ACLS, EMST, ATLS, you name it, any abbreviation of courses that teach doctors how to function under stress and in emergencies. That was my forte. I loved that. And we had that. I tried to drum that into my trainees or consultants or specialists that came through. I said, this is a place where I want you to make mistakes. If you don't make mistakes here, you've failed the course, literally, because then you don't learn. Sometimes you win, sometimes you learn. And I think that is such an important bit. It is normal to screw up, but it's not okay to screw up again and again. You need to learn from your screw ups. And I think that was what this guy saw in you. He looked behind what you saw. You saw your own mask. He saw the real you. And that is cool. That is a real leader. So good old Dr. O.
Yeah, he's an amazing man. He's an incredible guy.
So, and here you were. You basically developed this love affair with internal medicine.
Yes.
Became a physician. And how did that go as far as the military went? Because the military was waiting for you.
Right.
Did they need physicians, or did they?
Oh my goodness, yes, they were waiting for me. So I graduated. I was a little bit off cycle because I did the transitional year. So I graduated normally would graduate July, start in July, end up graduating the end of June. I graduated then December of '88. So we left Canton, Ohio. It's very chilly, cold, loaded up our car with, mind you, our 3 young children.
God.
Adam was 4, Chris was 2, and Angeli was 4 months old. So we loaded up the kids, and we moved now, because I was on this scholarship, thank goodness, the Army moved our household goods. As meager as they were, they nevertheless moved those for us. And I had gone earlier to our first duty station, which was Lawton, Oklahoma, rather, southwest or southeast corner of Oklahoma. I had gone there and rented a home for us ahead of time. So it was a door-to-door move, and goods were going to be delivered. And we made our trek from Canton down to Lawton, Oklahoma, arrived there. It was a dreary, gray, cold day, January 3rd, 1989, that we rolled into town. We knew 2 people. We knew my sponsor and his wife, and my sponsor was going to be my internal medicine chief, and his wife, she was an obstetrician, gynecologist. They were both in the military, but they were the only people we knew when we rolled into town.
And it's scary, isn't it? But I mean, let's also go a little bit further out here with our camera. Let's look at what the world was like at that time when you became an active part of the military. At that time, the Warsaw Pact, the Russian Empire, the Russian might was crumbling big time, although it would be only in November of that year that the wall came down. So you had no chance to know that. And the reason I'm saying that is once the Russian might had crumbled, then in the next few years, there was all this what are we doing with our army and all the turmoil that happened there. So we are beyond the Vietnam time.
Right.
Remember, guys, this was 75 when that sort of finished. There was the height of the Cold War. And now the period of soul searching, and that's where you started to come in. So there were no active wars. There were minor deployments in war zones around that time, but there was nothing big to write home about. So it was mainly being stationed in big bases and look after the people there, isn't it?
Well, until 91,
yep,
92, right. Operation Desert Shield, Desert Storm.
Exactly right. And that in its own right was the start of a very strange time in the US military. So you're right. So from Cold War, you suddenly went into the desert. But Desert Shield and Desert Storm, I mean, these were very quick deployments. Did you go with it? Were you deployed in country at that time?
Yeah, so I was deployed with the 47th Field Hospital. And so basically it almost took 3/4 of the staff from Reynolds Army Community Hospital there at Fort Sill, Oklahoma. Wow. We were what we call profus. So we were assigned to this field hospital so that if they did deploy, we went. That was our unit. And so we began training, and within a few weeks, so overnight, boom, we're assigned to the 47th Field Hospital. They're scrambling to get backfills, reserve backfills to come in and fill our positions. And we are taken out of our duties at the hospital, and we were ready to go. And so we left in August. Very uncertain times because we knew Saddam had missiles and that they were chemical ready, he had chemical weapons, that was known. And we had trained a lot in our so-called MOP suits to protect us. Many drills. And I can't tell you the number of times alarms went off and we put on our MOP suits in very hot temperatures and, would go to safe places, bunkers if you had them, other places where you could shelter, and waited for alarms to go off. So the 47th Field Hospital, we ended up in Bahrain, just across the causeway from Saudi. So that is where we ended up setting up our hospital.
Huge challenge for you as a man, because there were 3 young kids at home and a wife, and all just finding their feet in the new environment. And you say, sorry, darling, I need to play in the big sand castle over there. And how long did you get deployed?
We were gone about 7.5 months. So we had been in the Army just about a year, just shy, not quite, well, a little over a year and a half that we had been active duty. And they came in and said, all right, all this is going on and you're assigned to the 47th Field Hospital. And like I said, overnight, boom, we had orders to report to the 47th Field Hospital. So about 7.5 months we were deployed, but we had about 3 about 3.5 weeks or so train up time, getting ready. And that last week and a half before we finally flew out of the U.S., it was exhausting because we had at least 3 or 4 false alarms that we were leaving the country. So we had our bags packed.
That's right.
And they said, all right, we get the call, we're leaving. And typically that never happens at a decent hour. It's 2 a.m., report at
exactly.
4:30, report at 2 in the morning, all these crazy hours. So you get up, you say goodbye to your wife and your kids, and you go and you wait a period of hours. Oh, no, we're not going to be able to get on that flight. So you go home, you're exhausted, emotionally. And after like the 3rd time this happens, you're saying, please, please, please just send us. We're tired, and that happened there with my wife and all. We're like, oh, just please let this finally be the time, because we're all of us in the 47th were like that. It's like, all right, enough of this. Just put us on the plane. Our families are exhausted. We're exhausted. Just send us, please.
Is there any soldier in this world, regardless from where, who hasn't experienced a hurry up and wait? It is part and parcel of every large mobilization, or even smaller mobilizations.
Oh, yes.
That's right. I went with the New Zealand Army. I went to a humanitarian mission, and there we were. Oh yeah, it's all ready to go. Oh no, sorry, the aircraft is broken down, but another one is coming. Oh yeah, it's okay. Tomorrow we go. Yeah. Oh no. The next day we go. And it was just God. So everyone knows that, honestly. But I guess the point. Let's come back to your story, because you are a man who is already in leadership roles. So you have basically created your own destiny within the army. As a doctor, you're already an officer. Therefore, you're in leadership. You control things. So you are in control. On the wrestling mat, you are in control as much as you can, because around you is chaos. So therefore, what we do create in such a situation, we look at the things that we can control, and we will control them. And we'll put standard operating procedures in there and things like that. So you are in control. Now, fast forward a little bit. You keep going through your life. You have got these amazing adventures that go through the military. You've got these personal adventures where you learn a lot. And then one day down the line, not so long ago, the world is suddenly no longer the same, and it has nothing to do with any dictator in some foreign land doing stupid things, but rather that the world turns actually quite dark for you. Tell us a little bit about that.
Lights out, door locked, blinds drawn, phones turned off. I curled up under the desk of my office in a fetal position, asking myself, Skip, what are you doing? How did you get here? What happened? And I was reviewing, I'm a tough guy. I've endured a lot of things in my life. I've spent 37 months deployed, 30 months in combat zones, been in the Army, 25 years. I've been a national wrestling champion, on and on. I reviewed these things saying, I'm tough. What happened? And then I began to put the symptoms together, finally, admitting to myself, oh, it's horrible. Progressive insomnia, blue mood, relentless negative thoughts that played over and over in my mind, battering me, loss of confidence, indecision, shame, guilt, withdrawal, aches and pains that were magnified from my overuse injuries and old injuries from wrestling and the osteoarthritis, libido, decreased libido, decreased energy, anxiety, go into, it felt like my heart was doing this, and I'd go to church and my voice would quiver and my hands would quiver and we'd sing, and I think people are going to notice this and ask me, Skip, what's wrong with you? My cognition was off. I couldn't remember what I read 5 minutes before. Could recall certain medications or medical syndromes. I thought I was suffering pre-senile dementia, to the point where I called the chief of behavioral health and explained and said, I'm worried. Did neurocognitive testing on me. Thank goodness it proved I wasn't suffering that, and they attributed it to my insomnia and stress that I was getting out of the Army soon and so forth. But I was really concerned, and all these things finally put them together. And then after 4 hours, I admitted, Skip, you're depressed. Go get some help. April 17, 2014. I had hit rock bottom. All my toughness, my way of life, that way that I did things. Tough guy, gut it out, push through it. That wrestler's mentality, that macho man mentality failed me. I could no longer rely on that. I needed help. And I had to admit, I'm broken. I'm a wounded warrior. I cannot do this on my own any longer. And so I called the chief of behavioral health and asked if I could see somebody that day. And so I saw a clinical psychologist, and that started the long road to my recovery.
That, if you go back with the hindsight-o-gram and actually look, when did it start prior to you hitting that fetal position under the desk? What were the earliest signs? How did it sneak up on you?
You would have to go back and probably accumulated stresses. In retrospect, I had been deployed, as I mentioned, 37 months, meaning you lose over 3.5 years out of the life of your family. The stresses and strains of medicine, traumatic events from childhood, things that are so repressed that I don't even have recollection of memories, a variety of things. And my wife says I have a great capacity to forget unpleasant things. She'll ask me sometimes, do you remember that big blow up we had about XYZ? No, I don't. This type of thing.
Good. So your brain is good in hiding and digging holes and covering them up. The problem, of course, is you're hiding a sore in your body. You're trying to sort of you put the Band-Aids on and another Band-Aid and another Band-Aid.
Exactly.
And it just keeps going.
You think about that, and the people that you lose in war, the people that are come back mangled, the people that are damaged, and you grieve for these soldiers. You grieve for them, and with that, it affects you. You know that. I know that. The patients you lose that you take care of, that wounds you. You carry that with you. And so all those accumulated, as I look back retrospectively, because I would have said, I deal with that very well on an ongoing basis. But then what happened is I began to suffer that insomnia that just became compounded and worse. In fact, I was working with a psychologist on my insomnia starting the summer before. So starting back in June, July, I specifically began to work with this psychologist that was involved with this resiliency program with the Army. specifically on my insomnia, because it had just it was rearing its ugly head. And so I said, I got to get a handle on this. And so we were working on a lot of different things, but it just began to progress and progress. The mood began to progress. Then I had 3 surgeries over 7 months. And why those surgeries over that time? Because I had neglected my own care. I'd put things off, taking care of other things, taking care of my department, taking care of the Army, taking care of patients, taking care of all these other things. So I put things off, and then it's like, okay, I'm going to be retiring at the end of 2014. I need to take care of these things. So I had a graft of my lower gum here from my upper pellet, hard pellet. I had a knee surgery, and then I had skin scar resurfacing. So you see some scars here where I was burned. As a young child, I suffered some burns. But that being said, each of those were fraught with complications. And they took me out of my normal routine for a period of several weeks. My eating, the way I would eat, my sleeping compounded that insomnia. My exercising, which I used to control my anxiety and help my mental outlook. So all of these things, just each time, it just threw everything out of whack. And so one surgery for about 6 weeks, things there. And so you're starting to recover from that. And then you have another surgery, and it throws it out of whack. And you have, meanwhile, that my insomnia, my mood, my guilt, my shame, my indecision, my cognition, they're all progressively getting worse. I remember telling my wife at right about Christmas time, maybe before or after Christmas, I think it was New Year's of 2013. I told her, honey, I'm just utterly exhausted physically, emotionally, spiritually. I am just utterly exhausted at this time, sweetheart. And I remember saying that to her. I was recovering from my knee surgery, and I was just so weary at that time. So all those things compounded, caught up with me. And then you add to that the uncertainty of retiring from the Army. So given my cognition, given my mood, given everything going on, all of our plans to prepare for retirement and our move to Texas to relocate back here, looking for a job, applying for a license, those things didn't happen. So I didn't have my application for my Texas medical state license in. I didn't start applying for jobs till after we got to Texas. So life was in disarray, if you will. And so those were many of the factors leading up to my depression and where I ended up under the desk. And part of it was certainly that denial, that I was in denial and unwilling to accept the fact I'm hurting. I need to go get help. Because
that's right.
I'm a tough guy.
But you've been pushing throughout your whole life. Now,
exactly.
It's interesting, though, because you actually, with your sport, with your nutrition, and with the self-care that you did from that angle, I think you postponed the inevitable for quite some time. I think a man who would have been less able to look after himself would have been much earlier coming to the same point where your body says, you've got to be joking. Skip, you've burnt the candle on every bloody end and in the middle for the last 35 years. And now you still think that I'm happy as your subconscious. You have dealt with so much shit. Well, you actually didn't deal with so much shit in your life. So, you really think that we can't keep going like that? I mean, God or the universe is saying, come on, this guy's joking, is he? So, and I think that's the reality is sooner or later, it bites us in the ass. Sooner or later, we have to face the music. And the music means we have to deal with the trauma that we have accumulated in our lives. And some of us deal with it, unfortunately, with alcohol and drugs, because our pain is so bad that we want to drown the bloody thing. Or numb it, and that is the story again and again. There's probably not one memoir of a soldier who has written down about his life where you don't have that period of PTSD / marital breakdown and then drinking like a fish. It's sort of kind of a cliche, yet it is such a realistic thing. Now, what we see there are the extremes of PTSD, the extremes of human suffering. And then you say, that's okay. I mean, no doubt his friend was blown up in front of his eyes. No surprise that he's an alcoholic. Guys, you don't need to be this extreme. Trauma comes in any way, shape, and form.
That's right.
And it can hit you, and you don't even know that it's there. I keep telling about my story where I was attacked by a gang when I was a teenager, and I ended up quite beaten up, front teeth knocked out, not nice. And there was, at one stage in that fight, there was a very clear chance that I could die. I did not. The knife went past me. I was lucky, and a month later, I started training martial arts, and I became quite a good fighter. And I defined myself as a survivor, hey, I'm aware, I know it, I have got this. And I was priding myself on my situational awareness throughout my whole life. And it was only literally 2 years ago that I figured out what I call situational awareness was actually, thank you very much, PTSD, because I would wake up 3 o'clock in the morning. I would not necessarily have flashbacks, but this constant high awareness. And I would have flashbacks, but not necessarily of bad things. I would have flashbacks of where I said something nasty to someone. The reaction, however, that I got was like a massive punch in the gut. So I would drive there, and I would literally go like that. And my kids were saying, okay, what did you think of that? And it was that kind of exaggerated response. And I said, no, I just had a bad thought there and brushed it off. I never added one and one and one together. I didn't recognize the PTSD that was staring in my face since I was 13, essentially, up until 2 years ago. We are so good in not looking at ourselves. Here I am, a clinician. For fuck's sake, how many times have I diagnosed PTSD in someone else, or depression, etc., in someone else? It's barn door. It's obvious. There you are, looking in the mirror. No, there's nothing wrong with me. Boy, you just drank a whole bottle. You drank a liter of vodka last night. Yeah, and? Joe is much worse. He is much, much worse than me. So no, I'm fine. Yeah. Honestly. So here you are. I mean, I think the biggest kudos to you is that you had that insight, that you actually recognized what was happening to you then, because I didn't have that insight. I needed my wife to slap me around the ears, and it admitted me to a rehab hospital to actually make me see the light. And only then did I start that journey. And what a wonderful journey it was. So I'm actually so pleased, so pleased that is where I ended up. And for you to actually seek the help of a psychologist speaks volumes. Was that, I mean, you were working as a doctor in your field. Did you feel that your career was at risk at that time?
No. And at that point, it didn't matter to me. At that point, I knew I couldn't go on any longer. I was beat up, beat down, and so battered that I knew I could not go on any longer like I was. That I was desperate. At that point, I was desperate. I felt like I was in this deep dark pit where there was a long tunnel, my mind in a fog, my body exhausted, and I was slogging through a foot of mud. And at this far away end of the tunnel, there was a little speck of light. That's how I felt. And I just can't do this anymore. Or as we talk about on the wrestling mat, here's this opponent that's so powerful that any move you try is you can't win with this opponent. And he has got you on your back, and there's nothing that works to get off your back. It's just too powerful. And that was what it was like. At this point, I just couldn't fight any longer on my own. I had exhausted all my reserves. I was desperate.
And I was at that point, I spoke. When I spoke to a psychologist, I described it as driving in your car through absolute darkness, an absolute dark street. And as you come by some houses, the door is just that little bit open, just the tiniest bit, and you see a shimmer of some light, but not even a proper light, just a glance that there might be some light there. That's how I described it. So it's a very similar feeling. It's this deep darkness this was crushing my heart. Depression is such a bastard. It's such a brutal feeling.
Yes.
And
yes,
you were so honestly, kudos to you that you could recognize it. What was your wife at that time? Did she see that, or did you hide that from her?
Well, it must have been that I hid a lot from her, because in retrospect, she could see things as I started getting treatment, but it was insidious, progressive over time. Plus, my wife has always seen me as that strong, driven, push forward type of person. And I think because of that image, that I think, again, those rose-colored glasses that she saw me through, I don't think that she could see that, how far down I had gotten. Plus, I didn't show that side really to even her, how poorly I felt and the fears I felt, that I was fearful I'm suffering from new early onset dementia, and my confidence is in the toilet, and I can't hardly make a decision here, and I'm feeling guilty about this and shameful about this, and these thoughts are just battering me day and night. You don't deserve to be a colonel. You're a failure. You've let the Army down. You've let your family down.
Yep.
And over, night after night, day after day. And you can imagine when it's its worst at nighttime, everything's quiet, or they're laying in bed and your wife is sound asleep and you're laying there bug-eyed.
Exactly.
You know what I'm talking about.
No,
you know
3
what
o'clock.
I'm talking about.
3 o'clock, 4 o'clock in the morning, and it was bizarre. It was at one stage it was 3, sometimes it was 4, but on the dot. It was not just within a minute. It was nearly to a second. 4 o'clock, bing.
Yes.
And I had the recall of everything negative that has happened in the last 30, 40 years. It was there, bing, just replaying like something, and you think, what the heck? And it was just awful. But there you are, like you, I was hiding a lot of things. Was anger part of your depression? Was resentment part of your depression? Did you fly off the handle?
Resentment. Irritability. I could become irritable. And in retrospect, what my wife and I have learned, that I become irritable when my anxiety is up. That tends to be a manifestation of my anxiety more than anything. The other you asked about was the anger, and what was the other that you asked about? The
anger and yeah, it's anger that I was very much anger was part of me, and resentment.
right.
These two.
Yeah, resentment. Yeah, the resentment. And interesting with resentment, because I have spent a lot of time working on forgiveness over the years, a lot of time and effort as a Christian, and knowing that unforgiveness really hurts me, but also hurts God, because God says, forgive and you shall be forgiven. We pray it in the Lord's Prayer, that forgive us our trespasses as we forgive others. And all these things there. So I've worked very diligently to forgive others, and forgiveness is a choice. And I understand that. It's not, I feel this way. It's, I choose to do this. But what I found, Stefan, was as my mood and as this depression progressed, these old resentments, these old slights, all these things just bubbled up to the surface, and they play over in my mind and over in my mind and over in my mind. I would journal, and I hadn't looked at that journal for many years, but then when I was writing my book, I went back and I read some entries during those months, and they are so dark, and the mention of these slights, these hurts, these when I've been rejected, and the bitterness that comes out, I look at that and I think, wow. I was amazed at what I was feeling and what was coming out of me during that time, and how it was being manifested in what I was thinking over and over in my mind.
Absolutely.
And I had to deal with all of that as I went through the treatment of my depression again, to work through those issues.
Which is exactly what you needed to do. But obviously the God didn't send you the message clear enough. So you needed that kick in the balls to get down on the ground and actually admit that you're powerless. And isn't it amazing? This is exactly step 1, 2, and 3 of the 12-step program. You admit that you're powerless of what is occurring to you, and you realize that there is hope out there. And that's exactly what you did. So that is where it always amazes me that the 12-step program is actually such a sensible program. When you cut out all the things that are distracting, the references to God if you're a secular person, or the old language that comes from the fact that it's close to 100 years that the whole system of the AA was actually born and created. So take away the old language, take away God, and you have got a system which looks at a failing business and how you would resuscitate a failing business, or someone who is struggling, how would you support this person, etc. So it's ultimately, it's very common sense. And here it strikes me so much because you're choosing, without knowing, you're choosing exactly the same words that helped you to realize what the problems were. Because once you had chosen, or once you recognized there was a problem, and you had the insight that there is help out there, you sought that help, then you took an inventory. You actually tried to figure out what was going on in your life. Then you worked on that. Then you're basically creating new habits. You refocus on those things that are important, that you know will make you better. And then down the line, you make sure that you're not falling off the wagon again. And then you're coming to a point where you actually say, wow, now I want to give back. Now it is time to write this book. And there you are. This was a 12-step program that you have gone through without knowing that you did.
Yes. I've never heard anybody put it in those terms. That's amazing, the parallels with that.
Is it not? Is it not?
Yes.
But here you are. And
yes.
But the most important bit now for you guys out there, obviously, there is a reason that you tuned in today, either because you have got the interest in the addiction and the alcohol, and that's sort of where I came from, or the issue of the depression and the mental health issue in a very strong person and who gets brought down to his knees by it, was speaking volumes to you. Either way, what we want to show you here in this interview is that both Skip and I went through hell, but we got the help we needed. And we are now very different people. The new and improved versions. And
right.
However we defined ourselves, we are now enriched. There is no two ways around it. As if a new power was given to you. And that power of insight, that superpower of self-love, of actually accepting yourself for who you are, the person that has had all these problems and challenges in life. And no surprise, you have got the scars on the outside and on the inside to prove that. But here we are, now choosing to live a life that is meaningful, where we can turn around and actually say, yes, that shit has happened, but that doesn't define me. What defines me is how I respond to it. And that was such a powerful thing in your book. Because your book, just show us, I know you've got a copy lying there, show us your book. Indeed.
Wrestling Depression is not for wimps.
And that's exactly right. And it's a beautiful, beautiful drawing, actually. There. When I saw that, I actually thought, oh, what's that? And I think that was the initial hook where I thought, let's look at that. And I think that
my brother actually drew that for me.
Oh, excellent. Excellent. Yes. Oh, he has got a skill, the man.
Yes, he is.
So I think that the fact is that we all have our trials and tribulations.
Yes.
And we all are full of self-doubt, full of fear, at many times in our lives, full of shame and guilt. And it is, we have got this superb ability to put ourselves down and kick ourselves when we are on the ground.
Yes.
And then pour some salt in our wounds whilst we're on the ground. That's what we do. We're beating ourselves up. It's brutal.
Yes.
It's brutal. And I think people like you are showing the world that it's okay to not be okay. It is important to realize that this is part of your life. And what is not okay is to hide it. What is not okay is to hide it from yourself and say, no, everything is all right. I keep saying, guys, you will not find a simple Olympic athlete who hasn't got a performance coach. You will not find a top CEO who hasn't got a life coach, or many of them in actual facts, to deal with various aspects of their lives. These are all psychologists. These are all professionals who have made it a job to learn how to bring out the best in people. So there you are. All the people that you look up to, they have got that. Yet here you are watching this show and thinking probably, psychologist, that's for loonies, or that makes me weak, or that's no, they think it's all in my head. Well, a lot of it is actually in your head. So you need to realize that, guys. And your head can be either your best friend when you have learned the lessons and you learned to live your life in such a way that you are proud of it, everything included, not just some aspects of it like I did. I was very proud of being a doctor, very proud of my achievements there. And then as soon as it came to the real man in me, oh my God. So not this kind of schizophrenia, but actually truly when you come to the point of loving yourself
Yes.
warts and all, then this is such a freedom, such an authentic living where you don't have to live a lie anymore. And this is so powerful. Skip has been through that journey. So his book is exactly outlining his travel. And what I liked on your book is that you have got this kind of systematic way, similar to my steps to sobriety. I tell a story, then tell about the kind of lessons I've learned, and then I give an action plan or tips of how you might be wishing to go for it. And I've done that with the 12 steps, and then with challenges that inevitably you will hit in your life, ranging from depression, anxiety, PTSD, to dealing with criticism, dealing with difficult situations, those kind of things that maybe are not so easy to deal with. It's all in there, so check it out if that tickles your fancy. But equally, if you want to look at it from the depression point of view, Skip did a fantastic job of doing exactly that, telling a story, then describing what he has learned, and then giving you the key lessons in a beautiful, summarized way after each chapter. And I was saying before the interview, this is exactly how my brain works. So you actually ticked all the boxes there, and at times I had to smile to myself, because ultimately, whilst we both come from different angles at mental health, the lessons that you describe and that I describe are virtually identical. And so therefore it's so beautiful.
Yes.
So guys, you could do far worse. I mean, as soon as Christmas, what you might as well read a book or two. So
That's right.
Skip, there's Skip's book out there. There's my book out there. Don't be shy. Make it clever. Give one as a gift to your wife, and then she can start reading one, you the other, and then you swap. There you go. Yeah.
There you go.
Exactly. No, Skip, it is. You did a fantastic job for coming out, so to speak, out of the cupboard, because especially in a world which is dominated by type A personalities, like in the military, the special forces especially, where everyone is out there. And same for doctors, same for nurses, paramedics, ambulance men, fire, police, first responders as such. We are all the same. We are not let me cry with you. No, sorry. When the metal meets the meat, you actually need to do something else than crying. You don't have time for, hopefully you have time for compassion in the right moment, but
Right.
not, you have to do action first. You have to do the right action so that you can survive. The moment you know when you're suddenly in an ambush, the worst thing you can do is nothing. The best thing the next best thing is maybe something, and then the next thing is you have a standard operating procedure. You get out of this ambush as quick as possible with maximum force against the guys, lay down covering fire and get the fuck out of there. That's how you survive. So you take action, and that is so important. It is that kind of attitude that is so important. So guys, it is, you have a life to live, and you need to recognize that the negative emotions are there.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, you have times when you need to be the staunch alpha male who kicks ass, but if you're only that, then you're setting yourself up to fail. And it's just a matter of time until you break down, until you crumble. And I think that is the important bit. So unfortunately, we are probably preaching to the choir here, because those people who should listen to that lesson are probably not listening to it. So, so there's one problem. But no, it is hopefully those of you who have listened, maybe you can start spreading the word. Maybe you can say, hey,
Yes.
These two numbnuts got their act together. And darling, maybe you should listen to that. Maybe that is just something, spread the word. Just there will be people who need to listen to that, who need to learn that lesson in life, and hopefully before it's too late, hopefully before they're at rock bottom. it would be nice. And that's I guess why we are so transparent, isn't it?
Yes.
Mm.
Yes.
Now, fantastic. Please, Skip.
I would echo things that you're saying, Stefan, that even tough guys can get depressed.
Absolutely.
And you're not a wimp if you go seek help.
No.
Don't take one more day and suffer in silence. Go get help.
Exactly.
You owe it to yourself. You owe it to your family. And you owe it to your friends and your community. Go get help. And I want to also put in a plug for Stefan's book there. In reading it, and so many parallels with mine. In fact, the day he was in rehab, I think, was the 7th of March, 2014. Just a little over a month before I went and sought help. And so many of the things I'm reading parallel my own experiences he has mentioned. It gives you a great tour de force of alcoholism, denial, and the impact of alcohol on your body and brain, and how his life fell apart and his experience in rehab. I'm reading it, and it's made me relive some things because I have a son who's had a drug and alcohol problem for well over 20 years from the time he was a young teenager. Thank goodness he's been abstinent now for 2.5 years.
Wow.
But we've been to those rehab programs. And so the idea of the intake and the denial and sneaking drugs in. So you hear the stories afterwards and you find out, oh yeah, Dad, so-and-so brought drugs in. Yeah, we were using, we were having a party. We were all sharing. And I'm thinking, oh, brother, he was just there because the judge said he had to go there. That type of thing. But I'm looking at the parallels thinking, whoa. But again, men especially, but women that are listening too, you may know men, or you may be struggling. You don't have to struggle one more day. Go get help. Pick up the phone. Call and say, I need an appointment. And please, 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 if you are struggling with suicide, call that suicide prevention hotline or go to your nearest emergency room. Do not ever feel that you are alone. You are never, never, never alone.
I could not agree more. Skip, these are the perfect words to finish this interview, but these are also the perfect words to live your life by, because there are moments that are very dark. And you are not alone, honestly. You're one phone call away from help. And yes. I think it's so important. It is, in an ideal world, I would have all kind of helplines now listed, but because we are worldwide in our podcast here and our YouTube channel, it's impossible for me to give you everything in your country and every country that listens to this. So please, I think the simplest way is, if you want help and you do not have immediately a source, just Google. The moment you Google actually suicide helpline, it will automatically come with the helpline in your area and will come up with a number of varieties. So it is, and there is so much help out there. It doesn't matter if you're LGBTQ, if you are a veteran, if you are completely unrelated, domestic violence. It does not matter what it is.
Right.
There are people who are out there who have, like you, been in these places and who are now helping others because they have been there. They have found solutions that work. You are not alone.
That's right.
Skip, I'm so humbled and honored to have had you on my show. Thank you so much for your time, for your passion, and thank you for writing this book and giving us an alpha male insight in your life and having then the humbleness, the humility to actually describe what happened to you and how you got better. You guys out there, look after yourself and have a fantastic life. Make the most out of it. Make every second count. Bye.